Hafaday Guam. Hafaday is a general greeting here on Guam. It's a Chamorro term. For the Filipinos, it's almost equivalent to our mabuhay. It's Thursday today, April 13, 2023. And of course, we know that in the month of April, we celebrate the feast or the memorial of San Pedro Calungsod. San Pedro Calungsod is the second saint, Filipino saint. He was martyred here in Guam, and since it's April, I thought of sharing with you his life, the video. I made a presentation before, I believe it's 3 years ago, on the life of San Pedro Calungsod. So I thought of sharing with you that video that I made on his life, since it's the month of April, the month of his feast. But before doing that, let me show you. This is Tumon, the village of Tumon, and Tumon is the tourist area of Guam. This is like the center, and this is also the place, the area where he was martyred. So if you notice, all the 5-star hotels are in this area. This is Hyatt, that's Dusit. Okay, we have here the duty free. Okay, it's amazing how the place of the martyrdom of this is a duty free. So you'll notice on the signature items are sold here. You have the Guam Reef Hotel there. Westin is next. It's amazing that all that place of the martyrdom of San Pedro Calungsod is right in the middle of the tourist area of Guam. Okay. So you would see there, it's Westin. Okay, then Guam Reef Hotel here, and the place of the martyrdom of San Pedro Calungsod is right there below this area. So I'll show you before I give you the video presentation I made before. As I said, Pedro Calungsod, he's the second martyr, Filipino martyr, who died or was martyred here on Guam. He's believed to be born in 1654, and he died in 1672. We celebrate his feast on April 2nd. Unfortunately, this year, April 2nd, 2023, happens to be Palm Sunday. So we're not able to celebrate the feast of San Pedro Calungsod. So I thought of sharing with you. He's only 17 years old when he died. That's why he's like a model and a patron for our youth, you know, of serving the Lord, even to the point of offering his own life. So let's see the place, and then I'll show you the. Okay, that's Guam Plaza Hotel. That's Bayview there. Okay, Westin is there. Nico is right ahead there, and also Subaki, who's a new hotel here in Guam. Okay. Okay, so we are now going down here. I hope we can find a parking. Okay. Anyway, we'll be quick. We'll just take a video and then leave, just to show you where it is. Okay. They put a shrine here, of course, in his honor. Okay, see. He's together with Blessed Diego. Martyrdom. So that is the shrine. We'll be very quick. Wow. Look at that. Sorry. It looks like but this is believed to be the spot where Blessed Diego, actually he accompanied Blessed Diego. Okay, the Jesuit missionary, and of course Saint Pedro. That's their monument, but Pedro Calungsod is not yet in that monument because Blessed Diego was beatified first. Okay, so this is supposed to be Blessed Diego. Okay. This is the mother of the baby that was baptized. Okay. So anyway, so this is the spot. That's the shrine. Notice that, of course, in the story, after they were martyred, their bodies were thrown, specifically Pedro Calungsod, in the sea. Let us see. It's a beautiful day. Look at the sea. Wow, it's high tide. We're gonna swim today. It's high tide today. Okay, so it's believed that after they were martyred in that spot, especially Pedro Calungsod, this body was thrown in the middle of the sea. Beautiful morning. Okay, so that is Nico Hotel. Okay. After this video, I will be going back there where I usually swim. Where is it? There, here, this spot. Then I will do my swimming. So yeah, so this is believed to be the spot where they were martyred. So after this, I'll show you the video presentation I made of the life of San Pedro Calungsod. Have a day, mabuhay. God bless you. Good morning once again. So again, we are here in Matapang Beach, and a while ago I was showing you the place where Pedro Calungsod was martyred. Okay, we are here again. So just to give you from another angle. Okay. So the martyrdom of Pedro Calungsod was here. Okay, so remember we were there a while ago. Here in this area. Okay. So Pedro Calungsod, pray for us. So how did Pedro Calungsod get into this mission? Well, in June of 1662, there was a ship that left Acapulco, and the name of the ship is San Damian. It was on its way to the Philippines. And normally, when ships would travel from Acapulco to the Philippines, they would stop by what they call as the Ladrones Islands. Now, of course, in Spanish, when we say ladron, it means thief or robber. That's why when you say Ladrones Islands, literally it means islands of the thieves. Why was the island called Ladrones? Well, because their experience, stories would tell us that during that time that when the ships would anchor by the area of the Ladrones Islands, some natives would actually get things from the ship. But of course, we all know that during that time, the form of commerce is what we call as barter. Not like nowadays when you want something, when you want to possess something, you use money in order to buy the thing. But during that time, the practice normally is exchange of goods. That's why in a way, it will not be surprising that when the ships would go the area, the natives would try to get whatever they get in exchange for the things that they have. And exchange actually for the ships during that time, they would be asking for more water, for supply of food, which means actually fish, which means actually fruits, and whatever they could get from the island. And what do natives usually get from the ship during that time? They would ask for nails, for iron, something that they do not have on the island. So the use of this to make their own knives and even to make their own fish hooks. And so when San Damian stopped over by the Ladrones Island, the same experience happened. Natives surrounded the ship San Damian, of course, in their what we call as the proa. Proa is a kind of a boat that the natives in Ladrones Island popularly used during that time. Take note that when the ships would pass by the Ladrones Islands, they don't disembark. They just anchor in that area. Because at the time, there was no Spanish settlement yet on the island. In short, there's no place for them to stay. That's why they just anchor by the bay of the Ladrones Islands and would take this kind of exchange of products. And at the time, Padre Diego Luis de San Vitoros was on board that San Damian. Because he was from Acapulco, he was going to Manila, to the Philippines. He will be assigned there as a new Jesuit missionary. And all these things, while it was happening, the exchange of items, of products, if you may call them, Padre Diego was observing, saw everything that was happening, and that actually left an imprint in his heart, wanting to have the desire to go on a mission to this Ladrones Island, because nobody has yet evangelized or brought the Christian faith into these islands. So the sight of that, okay, really made an imprint in the heart of Padre Diego that he wanted one day to go back to these Ladrones Islands in order to evangelize. And when the San Damian was about to leave already Ladrones Islands to proceed to the Philippines, there was a man, a Filipino man by the name of Esteban, who got on board the ship. Because years before that, years before the San Damian anchored by the Ladrones Island, there was a galleon, and the name of the galleon is Concepcion, that sank around the vicinity of the Ladrones Islands. And all of those, of course, who were in the Concepcion, in the galleon Concepcion, stayed in Ladrones Island. Now that San Damian is here and they are on their way to the Philippines, Esteban took that opportunity to be able to hitchhike in order to go home to the Philippines. Now, mind you, my dear brothers and sisters, because of course, Esteban already lived in Ladrones Island for a certain period of time, he already learned the language. That's why, in a way, later on you will see that Esteban will play a very important role because he will be the one interpreting, teaching the future missionaries to the Ladrones Island. But anyway, when they arrive in the Philippines, although Padre Diego Luis de San Vitoris is assigned in the Philippines, but because that sight of the natives of the Ladrones Islands left an imprint in his heart, he has been doing everything, finding ways to be able to go back to the Ladrones Island in order to evangelize, in order to bring the mission. He approached the Governor General during that time in the Philippines. That's how, remember, the leaders, the civil authorities, the royal authorities before in the Philippines are called Gobernador General. And the Gobernador General in Manila during that time was Diego Salcedo. He approached Diego Salcedo and asked him if he could support, if he could get the support, and of course the finances, anything, everything that he needs in order to go on a mission to the Ladrones Islands. Well, the Governor General was, appreciative of the zeal of Padre Diego Luis de San Vitoris. But he just did not have the means. He did not have the ship. That's why he did not, even though he appreciated the zeal of Padre Diego to go on a mission to Ladrones Island, he was not really just capable of doing it. So what did Padre Diego do? Because he really wanted to go back to Ladrones Island to do the mission. So what he did was, he wrote the King of Spain, Philip IV. It happened that his friend, Padre Everard III, is the confessor of the Queen Maria Ana during that time. And connections. And so, of course, Padre Diego, through his friend, was able to, of course, get in touch with the king, King Philip IV during that time. And the king approved the mission and wrote the Governor General, the Gobernador General in Manila, asking him to provide a ship for Padre Diego Luis de San Vitoris to go on a mission to Ladrones Island. At first, of course, the Governor General was annoyed by that because he did not really want to support it. Well, not really that he did not want to support it, but it was difficult for him to support it. He did not have the means. He did not have a ship, but it's the order of the king. What could he do? Therefore, he ordered that a ship be built for this mission, and the ship was built in Cavite. And because the ship will be used by Padre Diego, and in honor of him as the Governor General, his name is also Diego Salcedo. That's why they named the ship as San Diego. Okay? They named the ship as San Diego. And when the ship was already finished, it was already built, the Governor General at first wanted to use the ship first to go to Peru before being used to the mission to the Ladrones Islands. But for whatever reason, the ship rolled over by the port, which is, it's like a bad omen. It's like they're saying, oh, God must be objecting to me using the ship, because this is supposed to be for the use of Padre Diego and his companions to go on a mission to Ladrones Islands. Therefore, he did not push through with his plan to use the ship San Diego to go to Peru. Rather, he entrusted it to Padre Diego Luis de San Vitores. So on August 7, 1667, the ship San Diego left the port of Cavite, and on board was Father Diego Luis de San Vitores. Together with him was Father Tomas de Cardenioso, who is his friend, and of course some soldiers. As we all know in history, even in Philippine history, we all know that the cross and the sword go together. And of course, we have also some survivors from the Galleon Concepcion. If you remember, I was mentioning a while ago, the Galleon Concepcion sunk by the vicinity of the Ladrones Islands, and the people who were on the Galleon took refuge at the Ladrones Island, and in staying in Ladrones Island, they learned the language, and one of them, as I have already mentioned, is Esteban. And these people, the survivors of the Galleon Concepcion, will play a very important role in this mission, because they will be teaching the language to the missionaries, and they will serve as interpreters. And aside from that, there were also about 15 to 20 assistants or catechists. So in short, we have Padre Diego Luis de San Vitores, we have Father Tomas de Cardenioso, we have some soldiers, we have some survivors of the Galleon Concepcion, and we have 15 to 20 assistant catechists. And one of these catechists is actually Pedro Calungsod. Now, we don't really know how Padre Diego and Pedro Calungsod met, or in a way, we don't know how Pedro Calungsod got into this group of missionaries. But only there is one probable reason, because of course we know that Pedro Calungsod is from the Visayas, and we know that the mission started from Cavite. Aside from that, we know that Padre Diego never been in the Visayas, so there's no way that they have met. So historians would tell us that one probable reason why Pedro Calungsod got into this group of missionaries to the Ladrones Islands is that in history, Ladrones Islands belong to the jurisdiction of the whole Diocese of Cebu. Therefore, for Padre Diego to be able to go on a mission to Ladrones Island, we presume he asked permission from the bishop of the Diocese of Cebu, who was during that time Juan Lopez, a Dominican. Now, of course, Juan Lopez, being the bishop of the old Diocese of Cebu during that time, as a kind of a support to the mission that Padre Diego will do to the Ladrones Island belonging to his jurisdiction, he must have provided assistant catechists. Now, as I have also explained to you a while ago in the introduction, we know that in the Visayas during that time, there were Jesuit boarding schools where they trained young boys to be catechists. That's why Pedro Calungsod must have been one of those trained in the boarding houses of the Jesuits in the Visayas. And when Padre Diego asked permission from the Bishop of Cebu to go on a mission to the Ladrones Islands belonging to his jurisdiction, he must have provided assistant catechists from those boarding schools, and one of them is Pedro Calungsod. And so they set sail. They were already in their voyage. They left, of course, the port of Cavite, but they did not go straight to the Ladrones Islands, because during that time, they did not have enough money, enough supply, and even human resources. So what they did was, instead of going straight to the Ladrones Island, they went back first of all to Acapulco to ask for the support of the authorities there, the Viceroy. And it was a very fortunate travel for them. Well, normally they say that the travel from Cavite to Acapulco would take you about 8 to 12 months. But their journey, their voyage only took them 5 months. But there was, of course, also storm along the way. But generally, it was a safe travel for them. Nobody got sick. There was a time that there was a storm, and everybody actually thought that it's already their end, but Padre Diego was telling them, it's just like the devil testing us and hindering our mission, And of course, after like a couple of hours, everything became calm again. And so generally, even though there was a storm, it was a fortunate travel. So when they reached Acapulco, they asked for the support of the viceroy to have financial support and perhaps added human resources. But the viceroy during that time did not also have funds. And not only that, there was no letter, no order from the King of Spain to provide for the mission of Padre Diego. But all of a sudden again, there was again earthquake. There was earthquake in Acapulco. Remember? When the Governor General of Manila, when he was supposed to use the San Diego, the ship San Diego, to go to Peru and not for Padre Diego to use, it rolled over all of a sudden. The ship rolled over and they were able to save it. Now they were asking support from the Viceroy of Acapulco. He was not willing because he said they did not have funds. And he said that, there was no order from the king. And there was earthquake again. And all of a sudden, immediately, the Viceroy provided enough sum of money for them that they need for the mission. And aside from that, in fact, even the citizens of the place, the people of the place, donated in support of the mission. In short, of course, they left Acapulco, and when they left Acapulco, it happened that there were 9 Jesuit missionaries who were supposed to go to the Philippines. They were assigned to the Philippines. And since there were only 9 of them, they hitchhiked in San Diego, in the ship San Diego, because from Acapulco, it will be going to the Ladrones Islands, and from Ladrones Islands, it will proceed to Manila again. And so the 9 Jesuits hitchhiked again with them. But actually, Padre Diego had an order from the authorities in Manila that he can take or choose 4 of those 9 Jesuits to join in the mission. And so he chose 4 from among the 9. That's why, all in all, actually, the group of the missionaries there, we had 6 priests, right? We have Father Diego Luis de San Vitores, we have Father Tomas de Cardeñoso, we have the additional 4 Jesuits, then the soldiers, then we have the survivors of the Galleon Concepcion, and then we have the assistant catechist, including Pedro Calungsod. So the ship San Diego departed from Acapulco on March 23, 1668, and it arrived in the Ladrones Islands on June 15, 1668. It anchored, of course, by the vicinity. As I was telling you, during the time, they don't disembark. They just anchor by the vicinity of the Ladrones Island. And as expected, when they anchored by the vicinity of the Ladrones Island on June 15, 1668, they were surrounded again by the natives on their proas, on their small boats that they use. Of course, because of the barter, of the trade that they were exercising during that time. But something strange at this very instance, at this particular anchoring of this ship, of the Spanish ship, because in the past, every time that the ship would anchor by the vicinity, no native is allowed actually to go on board the ship. But this time, it's a little strange that when they anchored and the natives surrounded them in their proas, making exchanges of products, this time, the missionaries were inviting the natives to come, to go on board the ship. And of course, it's like surprising for the natives. Now, of course, because we know that Padre Diego and his companions were not wasting any time in order to do their evangelization, to do their mission. The very first thing, when the natives came to them, they were already trying their best to communicate with them. Now, a while ago, I was telling you, my dear brothers and sisters, that of course, the role of the survivors of the Galleon Concepcion, remember? They were there as interpreters for the missionaries, and not only that, since they learned the language of the Ladrones Islands, of course, they were teaching the language already to the missionaries. And so you can just imagine when they anchored in the Ladrones Island and they were inviting the natives to go on board the ship, historians would tell us they must have been practicing for the first time talking to the natives using their own language, trying to communicate with them. And on June 16, the following day, there was a man who went on board the ship San Diego, and the name is again another Pedro. And we learned that this Pedro actually is one of the survivors of the Galleon Concepcion. And he stayed in Ladrones Island. And since he was in the Ladrones Island already for a certain period of time, he already learned the language. And not only that, of course, practically, he was known to everybody and he knew everybody. That's why when he went up on board the ship of San Diego, he was bringing with him his daughter, his child, a 2-year-old daughter. And because he's a Christian, he asked, when he learned that there are missionaries on the ship, he went on board and asked the missionaries to baptize his daughter. And they named the daughter as Mariana, again, in honor of Queen Maria Ana. And this Pedro, who went on board, played a very important role again. Why? Because as I have already mentioned, he already stayed in Ladrones Island for like 2-3 years. He already learned the language. People already knew him and he already knew the people. That's why Pedro, this particular Pedro, we don't really know his citizenship, whether he is a Spaniard or is a Filipino. We don't really know that. But of course, he was the one who will introduce the missionaries to the local authorities, the chiefs during that time. The chief of Aganya was Hurao. And so when he introduced the missionaries to Chief Hurao, and after making arrangements with them, therefore the missionaries already disembarked and built the very first residence in Aganya. And they called their residence as the San Ignacio de Loyola. Well, when they were there, they did not waste really any time. They started already preaching and evangelizing. And the reception of the natives during that time, they were so excited. They were asking Padre Diego to already baptize them. They were excited. They wanted to go to heaven, and they said they want to avoid hell. But Padre Diego was telling them, no, you can only baptize, you can only receive the sacrament of baptism. First of all, you must know the doctrine. You must know the faith. You must go through evangelization, catechesis. Now, during the time when they arrived in Ladrones Island, there are what we call as the Macanas. The Macanas are like sorcerers. They are like practices, they call on the spirits of their ancestors to call down rain, for healing. That's the kind of belief that they have. That's why during that time when the missionaries came, these Macanas, by the way, they keep the skulls and the bones of their ancestors in their houses. And they call on the spirits of those ancestors every time they pray and they ask for help, for sickness, as I said, for asking for rain, for good weather, and all of those things. Now, of course, with the arrival of the missionaries and the new teaching and evangelization, it will run in conflict with the Macanas. And because of the great success of their mission, they changed the name of the islands from Ladrones to Marianas. Of course, they named the islands as Marianas in honor, of course, of Queen Maria Ana of Spain. And of course, aside from that, in honor of the Blessed Virgin Mary. But as always the case, every time we are doing our mission and every time we are achieving our success, there will always be hindrances and obstacles along the way. And one of the greatest obstacles that the missionaries actually encountered in the Ladrones Islands as they do their mission is the presence of a Chinese fellow by the name of Choco. Choco has been in the islands for already a number of years, and in this stay there, he has projected himself to be a supernatural man who has power even over nature. And he would use superstition and all of those things in order to get so that he can have influence over the people, and of course, people will put their trust in him. That's why the appearance, the mission, the arrival of these missionaries has become a threat to his influence to the people. And because of that, he started spreading rumors against the missionaries. He was saying that these people, the missionaries, are scorned in their own country. They were hated by the Spaniards and they are actually hiding in this place. And in fact, the baptism that they're using can cause death to those who were baptized. That the water they are using is a kind of a poison for the babies. And aside from that, of course, he also allied himself with the Macanas. Remember, the Macanas are also offended because they were losing also their influence on the people because people started to believe on the missionaries and not anymore on the Macanas, on the sorcerers. Now, aside from that, of course, some of the chiefs were also becoming insulted in a way. They did not like anymore the missionaries because the missionaries were gaining their respect, gaining their popularity. That's why even Chief Hurao of Agania was getting annoyed with the missionaries. So all of these oppositions going on. Now, it happened really that when the missionaries would baptize, some of the babies would die. So all the more, Choco was making it an issue, a concern, saying that the baptism that the missionaries were actually performing is causing death to these children. And that's when opposition started. And they have encountered many other obstacles along the way. And one of this is when they had war with the natives. When they have to, of course, to hide in their residence in Agania, and what I have mentioned to you as the San Ignacio de Loyola residence. They had to hide there and they were attacked by the natives. And of course, God willing and with the help of God, of course, they were able to overcome the natives. And there was peace for about a period of 5 months. And in that peace, Padre Diego decided to build different churches in different places in the island and even in the neighboring islands. And so priests were assigned in different churches, in different chapels. And Padre Diego actually positioned himself in the place called Nisihan because during that time it was considered to be the most difficult place. And they said that the people in that area were rude. And so Padre Diego positioned himself to be assigned there while waiting for Padre Tomas de Cariñoso. If you remember him, he was at that time in Saipan. And so he was waiting for him to be back to the island of Guam. And while waiting for Padre Tomas, he was in Nisihan. And of course, when Padre Tomas arrived on the island, there was a young boy who was asked to go to Padre Diego to inform him that Padre Tomas has finally arrived. But the boy actually never came back and he would never reach Nisihan. And so the following day, on that same night, there was again an attempt to attack, of course, the residence of San Ignacio de Loyola. And because of that, 3 young boys the following day, since the first one to be sent to Padre Diego to inform him that Padre Tomas has already arrived, disappeared. He never came back. He never reached Nisihan. And so 3 young boys were sent to inform Padre Diego of the arrival of Padre Tomas and also to inform him of the attempt that night to attack again the residence at San Ignacio. Now, when the 3 boys actually went to Nisihan, they were encountered by another boy from Nisihan and informed them that actually the boy that they sent never arrived. And so they presumed they must have been killed. He must have been killed by the natives. And because of that, Padre Diego again felt that there's a threat going on. And in fact, some locals who remained faithful, loyal to the missionaries, informed them that there seems to be a secret opposition happening among the natives. And because of that, Padre Diego ordered that all the boys and everybody should be gathered again in the residence in San Ignacio, while he, including Pedro Calungsod, walked along the way by the seashore. They were looking for their companion Esteban, who by this time went in opposition also against them. And when they were walking, early morning of April 2, they were walking, going to, of course, the village of Tumon during that time, and in the early morning of April 2, 1672, that was the time when they reached, of course, by the shore of Tumon, and they learned that a lady just gave birth who happens to be actually the wife of Matapang, a well-known fighter during the time, a leader. And Matapang at this time, even though before there was an incident that he became baptized, and yet because of all of this happening, he resorted into apostasy and he went against the missionaries. He was annoyed by the missionaries. And yet, even in the past, when he had a fight with somebody and he was wounded, it was the missionaries actually who helped him and helped him recover from the wound, from the attack. But Matapang already forgot that. He believed in Choco, of what Choco was saying, that the baptism that the missionaries were performing actually is a poison to the babies. And so when April 2nd, early in the morning, when they arrived in Tumon, of course, when Padre Diego and Pedro Calungsod saw Matapang, they asked Matapang, "We heard that there's a lady who just gave birth. Can we see the baby and of course baptize the baby?" And of course Matapang retorted, "No, that is a poison. I don't like your doctrine anymore. Your God is not a true God. You are causing poison to the babies, and the babies that you baptize, they die." And because of that, knowing that Matapang is annoyed and he would not allow Padre Diego to baptize the baby, which is actually Matapang's child, okay? Matapang's child, what they did was to calm Matapang down. They gathered all the other children by the bay, by the shore of Tumon, and sang music, some songs of them, of the Catholic doctrine, hymns to Our Lady, in order to play with them. When Matapang heard that, all the more he was getting annoyed, and he went off in order to seek actually the help of another person by the name of Hirao. And he asked Hirao, "Let us kill the missionaries." And Hirao said, "Why would we kill them? They're not doing anything bad. Do they teach us not to steal, not to kill?" Because the missionaries taught them the Ten Commandments, evangelize them. And so Hirao was telling Matapang, "Why would you do that? In fact, don't you remember that you were saved by these missionaries when you were wounded?" But of course, Matapang said, "Okay, you're just a coward. You just don't want to fight with me against these missionaries." And when Hirao heard that, and of course he said, "No, okay, I'm going with you to kill the missionaries." True enough, April 2nd, 1672, at around 8 o'clock in the morning, they went back to the place of Matapang, where his wife gave birth, where the baby was. And of course, when Matapang was away, Padre Diego took opportunity of going to the house and asking the mother of the baby, because the mother, the wife of Matapang, really wanted her baby to be baptized. And so Padre Diego baptized the baby. When Matapang and Hirao arrived and learned that the baby was baptized, all the more Matapang became very, very angry. And so he really wanted to kill Padre Diego. But when he saw, the historians would tell us that the first spears that they were throwing were actually thrown to Pedro Calungsod. Now, there are several reasons that historians would tell us why were they at first throwing spears at Pedro Calungsod, not Padre Diego Luis de San Vitores. First thing, they said that when Hirao and Matapang arrived, they saw Pedro Calungsod teaching the kids. And they hated the doctrine. They hated the faith. They did not like the doctrine anymore at the time. And aside from that, they said that when Pedro Calungsod actually saw the two, Matapang and Hirao, about to attack Padre Diego, of course, Pedro Calungsod started to protect Padre Diego. That's why he became the target. And so whatever it is the reason, the first spears that were thrown by Matapang was actually aimed at Pedro Calungsod, according to the story. Being a young boy. By the way, how old was Pedro Calungsod by this time? They said that Pedro Calungsod, when he joined, the young boys, when they joined this mission, they were about 12, 15, 16, up to 16 to 17, 18 years old, that age. That's why Pedro Calungsod, when he died, he must have been only about 20, 22 years old around that time, around that age rather. And so because of the spears, because of his age, and they said because of his agility, he was a very skilled person, he's very intelligent, okay? And so he was able to actually avoid the spears and everything like that, but finally, he was hit on the chest. When he was hit on the chest, Okay, it was Matapang who threw the spear and he was hit on the chest. Then Hirao with his katana, it's like a bolo, a machete, if you call it, hit him on the head. That killed him actually. And Pedro Calungsod died actually on the lap of Padre Diego Luis de San Vitores, saying that knowing the personality of Padre Diego Luis de San Vitores, he must have given actually absolution to Pedro Calungsod before he died. And finally, when Pedro Calungsod died, of course, Padre Diego Luis de San Vitores became the target of the two, of Matapang and Hirao. And the same thing happened to Padre Diego Luis de San Vitores. He was hit by a spear on the chest, and he was also struck with a machete or a bolo on his head by Hirao. And the two died. And the place that is known to be the place where they were martyred is the place where we are right now. And this is believed to be the exact place where the martyrdom of Padre Diego Luis de San Vitores and Pedro Calungsod took place. If you notice, there's a shrine that is built here now by the Archdiocese of Bagania. I don't know if you can still see it. It's kind of dark already, but you can see on top of the shrine, it says Blessed Diego and Saint Pedro Calungsod. If you notice here, under, we have the images of Pedro Calungsod, and Padre Diego Luis de San Vitores. Because of course, Pedro Calungsod comes from the Visayas, this shrine is taken care of by the Cebuano Association of Guam, and they celebrate Mass here once a month. Okay, once a month. And here on this side, we actually have the monument. Unfortunately, of course, the monument only shows Padre Diego Luis de San Vitores, of course, Matapang, of course, Hirao, of course, the wife of Matapang, and of course, the baby being baptized. Because this monument was made during the beatification of Padre Diego Luis de San Vitores. We know that the beatification of Padre Diego Luis de San Vitores took place ahead of the beatification and canonization of Pedro Calungsod. So, I don't know if you can still see it. It's kind of dark already, but you can see the baby being baptized. And of course, there we have Padre Diego Luis de San Vitores. And on the left is, of course, we have the wife of Matapang. Okay? Beside, of course, the wife there is, of course, Matapang. And is at the back is Hirao. That's why if you go this side, okay, you will notice, of course, that here, Matapang is holding the spear. I don't know if you can still see here on this side. You can see the katana or the machete or the bolo of Hirao. So that tells us that this is the wife of Matapang. This is Matapang because he's holding the spear. And there we have, of course, Hirao because he's holding the katana. And there is Padre Diego Luis de San Vitores because he is baptizing, and we have the baby. As I said, unfortunately, Pedro Calungsod is not yet in this monument because when this was built, it was on the occasion of the beatification of Padre Diego Luis de San Vitores. But anyway, their martyrdom doesn't stop there. Doesn't stop in Pedro Calungsod and Blessed Diego de San Vitores as struck by the spear on their chest, and of course hit by a katana or by the machete on their head. Aside from that, after they have died, Hirao and Matapang, what they did was to tie their feet and to tie them in heavy rocks. And after tying them on heavy rocks, they loaded them, Padre Diego Luis de San Vitores and Pedro Calungsod, their bodies were loaded on proas, as they always do, and set sail on the Tumon Bay, which I will show you a while ago after this. It's just beside the shrine. And then in the middle of the sea, in the depths, they were thrown. That's why their bodies were never recovered. Let me show you where actually believed to be their bodies, in what part of the Tumon Bay the bodies of Padre Diego Luis de San Vitores and Pedro Calungsod were thrown. Actually, if you, I don't know if you'll be able to still see it, it's already dark. And so from the place where they were martyred, their feet were tied on heavy stones, on rocks, and they were brought to the sea. And the sea, you can see, is about 20 meters from the place where they were martyred. Let's go to the beach. After their feet were tied to heavy rocks, they were placed on a proa and sailed and thrown in the middle of the sea. This is Tumon Bay, where it is believed that the bodies of Padre Diego Luis de San Vitores and Pedro Calungsod were thrown, and their bodies were never found. From the shrine, which is the spot where believed to be the actual site where Padre Diego Luis de San Vitores and Pedro Calungsod were martyred. This is the site, actual site. Okay. And this will be the beach where they will be martyred. Okay. As we know that their feet were tied, and they were tied to heavy rocks and were loaded on a proa and thrown into the middle of the sea. This is now Tumon Bay. So they were loaded on a proa and thrown in the middle of the sea. This is Tumon Bay. Okay. Again, the shrine is there.